Well, good morning, everyone. For those who are in Southeast Asia, welcome Tuesdays with Gordon. For those who are in the US, good evening on a Monday evening. Gordon, you look a little tan this morning.
Yes, I am 10 because it's really hot here and the sun is blistering hot. And
Wow.
of course, I've been out in playing golf every now and
Well,
then.
I was in Seattle and it was very sunny, but they said, Tommy, you came at the first week in weeks where it's sunny, and in Chicago was rainy all weekend, and then now today is a little sunny. So we're beginning to see our sun here.
Great, you can have some of our sun. It's too hot here.
Gordon, we were just talking beforehand. You have a busy week coming up next week, Monday, Tuesday. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so for some reason or other, I quite sillily accepted two assignments. One was a kind of a corporate offsite meeting where I'm conducting a team building exercise for 1.5 hours with senior managers. Obviously, that I've done this many times, but it's still that stress that sticks out in the background, and so I would call it a micro stress, something we talked about a month ago, I think.
Yep.
And the other one is a corporate talk to a group of people about family. And again, I've done this many times, but it's still that micro stress that sits in the background.
Yeah.
You've experienced micro stress before?
Uh, every single day I deal with this micro stress. Employees, funding, conversations, everything like that. I find that a lot of times when I have to have a hard conversation with somebody, that's when some of the micro stress does come in.
Yes, and do you get that situation when this micro stress makes you feel as if, gee, I want to quit? I think it kind of speaks to a bit to our topic today that we were trying to talk about.
Yeah. Now, before we talk about it, have you, for the team building, is it going to be an exercise? What are you going to do for team building here, Gordon?
Right. So I'm a certified Clifton Strength trainer or coach rather, and what we're going to do is we're going to use that as the base of which we were going to work through how a team of different personalities, I would say,
Yeah.
work together and kind of depend on each other, and become really good at as a team.
Yeah. Will you be running scenarios with them using some of those gifts, or will you have them share about some of their strengths and how they work with each other?
Right. So I'm the first segment of the entire offsite. And that's where I'm trying to break the ice. And so I'm trying to get them to recognize that their difference is actually a
Yeah.
strength. Yeah.
Very, very good. And then your talk, what will your talk be on Tuesday?
We're going to talk about money and families. How the importance of money in family, and how conversations about money can be quite challenging, but yet very essential. And so, how do you talk about money in the family?
Very, very good. Now, for those who are listening, especially in the US, talking about money in the family for Americans is pretty easy, but you're saying that it actually has a new dimension in those in Singapore, right?
Well, I think it. We all assume it's easy because we all assume that we have similar outlook about money. For example, we share similar values, we share similar money habits, but that's not true. No one two-person shares similar values about money
Yeah.
or habits at the same time.
Okay, on side note, and we'll dive into this. I was just talking with Clara, who is my Hong Kong director for Resource Global. We're both Chinese, and this is the first I ever heard about it. In Hong Kong, it is expected a percentage of your salary automatically goes to your parents.
Well, let's put it this way. It's a little bit about filial piety. Your parents looked after you or brought you up, and they spent money bringing you up. When they grow old and they stop working, it's
Yeah.
your responsibility to look after them. That's what
Got
it
it.
is.
It is very, and a lot of times she was telling me it is assumed that every single month you give them, but that's a different thinking for us who are in America. Even though I'm Chinese, it's something I've just never been taught, never something that was expected by my parents.
Yes, and I think it's a Chinese. It's a difference between the American culture and the Asian culture. The
Yeah,
American culture, at 18, you're expected to leave house and live on your
yeah,
own, right? Not in the Asian culture. We stay till we get married, I suppose.
yeah.
Sometimes even after marriage.
Got it. All right, going back in terms of this micro stress, everything like that. Our conversation, our article is you checked out at work. Here's how to check back in.
Yes, and
Have you,
go ahead.
my question for you is: have you ever had a situation where you mentally checked out for one reason or another? Talk to me about that situation.
Yeah, so actually, I've done that maybe 3 times in my entire career, and in fact, I use it as a way to signal to me that perhaps it's time for me to move on to a new job. And it all starts with, okay, I'm waking up and I'm dragging myself to work, and then it
Yeah.
gets worse, and I don't like going to work, and that's when I start mentally checking out at work.
Yeah. And for you, a lot of times, have you always just left, or were you a time where you just had to reframe your way of thinking and things changed?
Well, so I wouldn't leave my job without having a job in hand.
Yeah,
That's just me. So it takes a while to get a job. So it may take 6 months. It may take even up to 9 months.
Yeah.
And during that period, that's when this article kind of speaks to me.
Yeah. One of the things it says about this article is we all hope that we enjoy our jobs, but often there may be occasions when we have mentally checked out of our role while continuing to receive their paycheck. We may be unhappy with our jobs because there's a constant deluge of stressful deliverables, bad bosses, unfair practices, stress, frustrations. Perhaps the scope of work has shifted in a way we can't control, or maybe we have a manager, coworker, client who makes things difficult, or perhaps there just aren't enough growth opportunities to sharpen our skills and capture our interest. And so it talks about a couple of ways that we've had to do all those different things. And Gordon, in some sense, I would say this is, I remember when I built cell towers, I had this terrible manager. Number one, I had this one manager who I loved dearly, Dan, but he was so good, he got promoted. Well, his replacement was someone I did not like. She loved to take control of everything. She loved to take credit everything. She pitted people against each other. It was a terrible atmosphere. And so I hated coming into work, and I found myself mentally checking out. So it really was hard to try to check back in. It was hard to focus on work. It was hard not to be negative at work all the time. So I get it. Even now, with one of the clients that I work with right now, I don't like the atmosphere in which the school operates. I don't like the people and the management and the board of directors. I just don't like how they treat people. I've had to find myself mentally trying to re-engage with everything that's happening.
Agree. And I think all of us have these episodes throughout a career. And so sometimes the decision may be to leave. Sometimes it's just maybe to come and stay on,
Let's talk about some of those options. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. First one is decide how to refocus your reputation by creating your career commitments. Refocus your reputation by creating your career commitments. Talk to me about that.
Well, the article is very eloquently put it. The first question we need to ask ourselves is, what do I want to be known for? In other words, in my professional self, how would you like other people to know you for as a professional?
Let me ask you, what did you want people to know you for?
I think I share this with probably quite a number of people. One is I like to be a somewhat a subject matter expert. Like I know a lot about a certain subject.
Yeah.
So of course, in my job, it's about investing and managing money. I like to be known for my integrity, for example. A little bit like I'm honorable, I'm reputable, I'm trustworthy. Those that are the first two that come to my mind.
Yeah. For me, Gordon, a lot of times is I want people to see me when my reputation is Tommy can get the job done. No matter what the situation, he'll get the job done. He doesn't take credit. He doesn't toot his own horn. He doesn't brag about it. But whether you're in trouble or whether you're dealing with a hard situation, you're in unknown territory, he'll always get the job done.
Yeah. And here we are, the two of us, and we already have kind of slightly different things about what we want to be known for.
Yeah. Second one, be intentional and increment by asking ourselves, how will I show up at work moving forward? Talk to me about that.
Right. So, for example, like the one that I said, I would like to be a subject matter expert of some sorts. And so I would like to really move forward by, reading up, making sure that I'm always keeping up to the cutting edge, so to say, and letting kind of people know that I am really interested in my subject. And you can trust me for that.
Yeah. I remember I was at Wheaton College and Dave Evans was a guest speaker. One of the students asked Dave, what would happen if I just hated my job? How do I change my attitude? Do I have to change or the situation have to change? And what happens if it doesn't? And Dave Evans says to them is, what happens if you reframe the way you look at your current situation and work? For instance, if you're working in a coffee shop and you hate the mundane way of doing things, or you're doing a job that you just don't like, how can you relook at the situation and now create the most efficient way possible and have the best customer service that every single person who walks in that coffee shop will sit there and notice how friendly you are and how welcoming the environment is? What happens if you reframe that situation? Even for me, a lot of times. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go on.
For instance, even in terms of, I still remember in my early days where I first started my job and I had 200 files from Verizon Wireless that came in. My job was to organize that file room. I could sit there and complain about it and say, I graduated from the management degree from a reputable business school. Why am I doing this? Okay, what happens if I create such an efficient system in such an organized way that everyone sits there and it creates efficiency around the office? And now at the same time, that's why it becomes a challenge that I have for myself.
Yeah. And when once I feel like I stopped focusing on my bad environment and something that I cannot control, but focus on something that I can control, which is, being an expert or being good at this and, seeing something good about myself so that other people would know that, hey, Gordon's a great guy. He's a good worker. I like to hire him. It opens the door for me.
Correct. Like for instance, you did banking for so many different years, right? And after a while, about 10, 15, 20 years, you've gotten to the point it's the same old thing. But what if you reframe your mind and says, okay, what are the challenges that I need to tackle to make it even more effective, to make us the top running department? What happens if I see a problem that people are leaving? You find that challenge in order to motivate you.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that's exactly trying. I think you use the word reframe, but I think trying to look at challenge differently, challenging yourself instead.
And which leads to the next one: commit to solving simple but impactful problems. You got to find that challenge that motivates you, right, Gordon?
Exactly. Now, so the article also said, consider how to adjust the way we approach day-to-day responsibilities at work. So look at your responsibilities as challenges in which you can do something about it, make it better, improve the life of yourself and the people around you.
Correct. That was, I think a lot of times for me, more so than the money or anything, Gordon, it was the challenge. I needed to find the challenge. And after the challenge was gone, I needed to find something else. I tell you this, I think I may have told you this one time. I spent 3 years working as a pastor of a church, right? It was after my time building cell towers that I worked at a church for 3 years. The challenge was gone after 3 years. It was, hey, how do I work on small groups and all that stuff? When I felt like I couldn't muster enough thing to tackle the next challenge, I realized it was time to go and walk away.
So interesting that even a very personal or interactive role like a pastor, you can sometimes lose that challenge. And I think it's also sometimes we tend to forget what the meaning was, or the meaning starts to take a different look because of the work that comes in. And I think that's when you start to think, okay, I need to rethink about what I'm doing now, which is exactly what happened in the last phase of my banking career.
And right now, a lot of times coaching is what you really enjoy doing. You thrive in it though, right?
Exactly, and that is so different from the last year that I was in banking, where I loved dealing with people, helping people, and giving advice, perhaps, or in this case, investment advice to people. But there were just so many administrative stuff, so many requirements from a compliance-based point of view that it kind of crowded out the meaning of what I'm doing there, and so pivoting makes so much sense.
Sometimes I realize maybe my personality is I love those flexible organizations that's constantly making changes. If I spend too much time in a bigger bureaucratic organization, I feel like I don't have the ability to be flexible and to really be able to work out of my strengths and passions. And if all I'm doing is just managing people, that becomes old for me pretty fast.
Yeah, exactly. And here's something that I felt quite interesting. And that is, you and I talk a lot about, challenge and meaning. And we think about it as, something that we need. We kind of hate administration and bureaucratic stuff. But I've met some people who love that because they see the neatness and the beauty of creating something that people enjoy doing.
Oh, I have a friend, Gordon, who loves consulting with organizations on governance. I said, how in the world do you enjoy doing that?
Yes, exactly. So I love the fact that, we have different ways of thinking about the way we work and what it means to us.
Yeah. Last thing it tells us is avoid seeking external validation from others as the only measure of success. And that's key. You're going to have to figure out internally what drives you and motivates you. You're going to have to reframe some of the things that you're doing. But at the same time, if all you're depending is validation in others, that can only go so far.
Exactly, especially when you have a terrible boss. A boss that, or colleagues that steal your limelight, so to say, or steal your thunder. And that's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah. My motivation, Gordon, is I always say it's not money, it's not power, but I really want to make a difference in the lives of other people. But I also want to be known as a person that no matter what it is, Tommy Lee will always get the job done. He won't sit there and take all the credit. He doesn't need the credit. And in some sense, actually, but yeah, at the same time, if you need help, go to him because he'll make sure it gets done.
Right. And which brings us right back at the top, which is, what brings us to work. And correct, I really like that,
Yeah, it goes back to a talk that our mutual friend Dave Evans gave a talk on meaning is the new money. And he says, no, because after a while, how much more can you pay a person? Do you every single time they're unmotivated, do you give them more money? What is it that gives them meaning in life and what they do that will help them continue to grow?
And money can bring about excellence. Only meaning can bring about excellence. When it means so much to you, you would do an excellent job about it, right?
Correct. And that's the thing. A lot of times for some of those employees is if that challenge as a boss, your job is to sit there and say, maybe this job isn't for you. Let me help you find something that taps more into your skills.
Exactly. Yeah, I like to think about it. That is something that you and I do quite a lot.
Tuesdays with Gordon, you checked out at work. Here's how to check back in. You have 2 busy days coming up next week, Gordon. So, hey, look, depending on what your situation is, we may or may not get together, but I hope that we will, but I also want to be sensitive to you.
Yes, I hope that we will.
Talk soon, Gordon.
Talk to you.